Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Sueur City Council meeting dated December 9, 2024. At this time, we're going to call our meeting to order. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As council members, you are presented with your packets over the weekend. Hopefully you had an opportunity to reach out to Mr. Roby if you had any questions. At this time, I'm going to look for approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving into the public hearings, Mr. Roby, I think will start us off at this, will you not?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two public hearings tonight. The first one is related to the Ridge Road Development TIF District establishment. I'll give a quick introduction here, and I will invite the city's bond advisor, Shannon Sweeney, with David Drown Associates to come forward and share some further insight with the council. The developer, in this case, Workhorse Land Development, has applied for tax increment financing associated with the housing development at the confluence of Ridge Road and Distal Drive. The EDA reviewed the TIF plan, the draft TIF plan for the development, recommend that City Council call tonight's public hearing. In summary, the developer is requesting a 26-year TIF associated with 35 homes and the associated public infrastructure improvements on the property. Financing plan suggests that the increment payments would commence with taxes payable 2027. 95% of the available increment would be reimbursed to the developer on eligible expenses up to $2.3 million total reimbursement. And following the public hearing tonight, during the regular agenda, City Council will consider a resolution that would authorize the establishment of the TIF district, authorize execution of the TIF agreement with the developer, and further approve the TIF plan itself. With that, I'll ask Mr. Sweeney if he can come up to the podium. Shannon's been with us for a number of years now and has advised the city on several TIF projects as well as several developments generally. So Shannon, feel free to share anything else that you care to on this.
Sure. Greg Kirby, members of the council, ultimately later this evening you're going to be asked to consider adopting a tax increment plan that designates specific property, in this instance 11 acres of land proposed for residential development, to be included within the boundaries of that district. And within that district, tax increments or new property taxes associated with an increase in market value can be captured for a period of up to 26 years. There are income restrictions that are required to be imposed on the development. 95% of the new owner-occupied homes have to meet income restrictions that apply to the first occupant. They have to be at either 100% of statewide median income for a family of 2 or fewer, or 115% of statewide median income for a family of 3 or more. Presently, that would be $111,800 in gross household income for 2 or fewer, and $128,570 in gross household income for a family of 3 or more. Developers able to sell lots to folks that don't meet those restrictions. We're just not able to capture increments from those properties. And so in that instance, the developer has motivation because the developer is incurring all the costs associated with development and ultimately is selling lots for less than what it costs to build and is looking for a reimbursement of those costs plus interest. So the gap that they've indicated is $2,300,000 plus their carrying costs. Within the TIF plan budget, we see a reimbursement not only for the $2.3 million, but also an interest factor of 4% on that reimbursement in order to compensate ultimately a bank that's lending money in order to fund those costs. Again, it's limited to just this 11-acre parcel. It's limited to, the capture is limited to just those homes that are sold to first occupants that meet the appropriate income restrictions that the developer has to certify to us for each lot. And ultimately, the reimbursement has to be within the budget established within the TIF plan. And so the TIF plan and budget were crafted based on the facts of the project. And ultimately, it's coming to a head now with regard to adopting a TIF plan and authorizing execution of an associated development agreement. We are capturing city and county property taxes as a part of this TIF district, and this both are city, county, and school district, and both the school district and county have been made aware well in advance of this public hearing and provided a draft copy of the TIF plan as required by state statute. So happy to receive comments or questions with regard to the materials provided, but ultimately action to be considered later this evening is adoption of a TIF plan and authorization of execution of a development agreement. This matter will then go to the EDA for final approval on December 23rd. So happy to answer any questions that may come up. So
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Yes, Mr. Tui, go ahead.
Yeah, just clarify, I see the schedule here
Yes.
for the payout. What if, pick a year, 2033, there's only 12 houses built? Is that TIF applied only to those 12 houses?
correct.
Okay.
The developer can, or the city's pledge to the developer is only to reimburse those tax increments that are captured from houses that are sold to income qualified people.
Regardless of when that may happen.
Regardless of when it may
And
happen.
that 26-year period.
Yes,
So if they only get 28 houses, in 26 years, it doesn't carry forward. It's,
that's correct.
okay, you got to take it when you get it.
There's a statutory life associated with this.
I think 26 is the max of stuff.
Yes.
State of law.
Yep.
The other question is, people that meet the income requirements, okay, the house is there, I bought it. Now I've got somebody that doesn't,
Oh.
and it's been 30 days since I closed. Can I sell that right away?
As long as the first occupant has met the income restriction.
So there's no time limit.
Not by state statute.
Okay. Interesting. If you were a flipper and you met, that'd be a good thing to get into.
The flipper really doesn't derive a benefit. It's only the developer. So if the developer, found people that were interested in only living there for 30 days and
But you got to admit, it's
Yeah.
possible.
it's possible.
Okay,
We've done a lot of them though, and we haven't seen it yet. but
okay.
It's
Thank you.
possible.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Sweeney, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. If anybody else has any other questions, we may call you back up.
Absolutely. Thanks.
At this time, we'll move into the public hearing.
Yep.
Yes. With that, we're going to entertain a motion for a public hearing related to the established TIF District 1 through 22 associated with Ridge Road Housing Development. Thank you, Council Member Schrader. Second, Council Member Tui. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. We are now open the public hearing. Nobody on the list. Thank you. We appreciate it. At this time, then I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. So moved. Thank you, Councilmember Huntington. Councilmember Tui seconded. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
All right.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the public hearing on the truth in taxation, 2025 general fund and levy and budget. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At this time, typically Finance Director Graff would be here to present to you. Unfortunately, he's unable to be here with us tonight. So he and I have consulted on the specific of the presentation itself. Of course, members of the Personnel and Budget Committee who have met numerous times with staff will be very familiar with the numbers here. Personnel and Budget Committee last met in preparation for this meeting last Monday, December 2nd. Statutorily, the city is obliged to hold a truth in taxation public hearing annually. The city conducts this in anticipation of the final general fund levy and budget adoption. The regular agenda tonight, the first agenda item, 8A, is specifically related to the items that will be covered here in the public hearing. So in the presentation that I share right now, if there are any questions as I go through it, please feel free to jump in and ask. There will be opportunity as well during the regular agenda. The presentation itself during the regular agenda will be rather brief. I just discussed that. This is a chart that City Council is very familiar with. The budget process itself began formally in June of 2024. I will say that every year the budget process is truly an annual cycle, where even when we get through the final levy adoption here in December, there will be, I would say, very preliminary budget discussions around 2026 that kick off in January. Whether it's items that come up early in the year that need to be addressed that we're not budgeted for in 2025, or future plans, projects, things like that. But formally, the process of the budget kicked off in June. In July 2024, the Personnel and Budget Committee began to meet. This was the first of 9 public meetings that the Personnel and Budget Committee held to discuss the 2025 budget and levy. And September 9th, City Council approved the preliminary levy and general fund budget for 2025. Tonight is approval of the final levy and budget following public comment at the public hearing here tonight, with plans to then certify the final levy and budget to the Sueur County and the Minnesota Department of Revenue by the end of December. In September of 2024, as you recall, City Council approved a roughly 7.98% preliminary general fund levy increase, proposing a 2025 levy amount of $4,005,946. Personnel and Budget Committee then conducted several meetings since September to look at a number of inputs, including the capital plan, the project list, and future budget items, equipment needs, things like that. There were also some a number of assumptions that were checked, verified. Some had to be changed between September and now, such as insurance rates. Those are assumptions in September. We generally know what those are going to be come December. We don't get insurance rates from the League of Minnesota Cities or from PEEP, our health insurance carrier, until October or November. So those numbers have been finalized. So there are some numbers, as Director Graff says, there's some puts and takes that put us up a little bit, then there's things that bring us down a little bit. Some of the major considerations that are generally consistent from September 9th through tonight, when looking at the 2025 budget, are our LGA, or local government aid from the state of Minnesota, revenues only increasing $2,000 year to year. There are increases in expense in information technology and the police department technology expense. Small cities assistance revenue is increasing $72,000 year over year. Our debt service levy is up approximately $53,000. There are no new levy issuances, or debt issuances, in 2024 that have an impact in 2025's levy. These are all, I call them, historic bond issuances that have principal payments that are increasing in 2025, and these were known at the beginning of 2024. Standard performance plan increases are assumed in this budget, projecting some building permit revenue increase based upon planned increase in developments. And one of the major factors, as always, is capital funding. Continue to invest in capital funding to allow the city to pay cash for some future large capital needs instead of having to borrow for everything. And we'll discuss that a little bit when we get into the enterprise funds, specifically the world that the wastewater fund lives in versus the world that the electric fund lives in. One lives in a very cash-based world right now, and one, based on fund balance, does not live in a cash-based world. It has to borrow for everything it needs. And so the goal here was to invest in the capital levy so that every year we can be investing and paying cash for items where we can, instead of borrowing and then needing to levy additional dollars to pay interest. And just for purposes of the discussion, any 1% increase or decrease to the levy is roughly $37,000. 2025 tax levy summary is on the screen here, is included in the packet as well. Overall total base levy $2,965,969. EDA levy remaining generally flat with a slight increase of $3,700. Debt levy, as noted earlier, increasing approximately $53,000, excuse me, for a total citywide levy of $4,002,095. We've talked at some meetings in the past about our tax capacity and where the city is able to draw, what the city's tax base looks like from a property type standpoint. We've talked quite a lot about some major historical changes from 2017 through 2021, 2022, where our community, along with every community in Sueur County and many communities across Minnesota, saw a real shift in the burden of property taxes moved to residential properties, given the dynamics of the housing market and non-residential property valuations. That has stabilized a little bit, and for the 2024 payable 2025 evaluations, the residential share of the tax capacity is estimated to decrease very slightly. It's still over $1 million higher than it was 6 years ago, but at least has plateaued for a year. And this is just a graph depicting that, showing that in 2025, what we're estimating is that 62% of our current tax capacity will come from residential properties, 29 from commercial industrial, 7 from apartment, and the remainder from ag and other properties. This chart just shows our total base levy or debt service EDA and tax capacity over time, what the levy itself has done versus what our tax capacity has done. And it is a very, very broad stroke rule. You like to see your tax levy grow when your community grows, right? Because as your community grows, your needs for services, core services, increases, and there you would see an increase. Council several years ago recognized that there was some underinvestment in many areas of the general fund, made some pretty substantial investments, increased general fund spending in capital and public safety in particular. And to keep us not exactly growing with the community at the time, but to try to get us caught up to where our community investment city council felt it should be. I did mention this already, so I won't. Let's just skip that slide. General fund revenues. These are just our high-level buckets of revenue dollars where the city would get its funding. Property taxes in 2025. It's estimated that our revenue increased 5.13% year to year. Licenses and permits will be up about $76,000 per current estimates. Intergovernmental, a lot of that is our local government aid, also our small cities assistance, and our county state aid. Highway dollars up about $62,000 year to year, and then some minor puts and takes elsewhere. Overall change of 6.12% revenue increase year to year. And because we have a balanced budget, you'll see the general fund expenditures also expected to increase by 6.12% in 2025. These numbers have not changed materially since September. Dollar-wise, we are seeing, I'll point out a couple of the large ones. Police showing an increase of $141,000 year over year, or roughly 9.97%. Streets seeing an increase of $32,678 year to year, which is a little under 4% increase. unallocated expenditures, that's mostly our IT expense. So the cost of IT services has gone up markedly. We have some significant hardware upgrades that we've had to make this year and we'll have to make next year, which will necessitate a greater investment in 2025. There's a lot of detail on this page for a pie chart, but if you break it down, roughly 70% of all the general fund dollars go into public safety and streets, core governmental services, building code enforcement making up a little under 5%, accounting, legal, insurance, work comp, IT, making up the rest. And this is fairly consistent with the breakdown of expenditures over the last 3 years. At this time, I can certainly take questions from the council. And if there are none, I suspect there will be some.
Is there going to be a chance later?
There will be later as well. You can either ask now.
You know I'm going to say something, so you want it over with now, or do you want to wait?
Go ahead.
You want to do it now? All I really have is a couple. One, because I'm not going to be here, but you folks got to do something about the community center. This budget puts 29 cents of every levy dollar to the community center. I love the place. I'm there 4 or 5 times a week, but I'm only one, maybe 5 to 7% of the population of this city that are members there. This is a bottomless pit. And I don't know how one could argue that it isn't. Every year it goes up, and now it's up to 871,000 out of 2.9 or $3 million bucks. You got to do something. The other thing is I did some simple math. I looked at New Prague, I looked at St. Peter, and I looked at Sueur. So St. Peter, what their 2024 total levy was, and did a simple division by the population, $350 a person. Did it to New Prague, $583 per person. The city of Sueur, $879 each. It can't continue that way, folks. That is incredible. That's numbers that you would expect in Edina or Wayzata. And if it doesn't stop, and with the 87% capacity, there's very little blood left in the turnip to squeeze. That's like having a max credit card, and you've spent 87% of your limit. I'm not going to be here, but you got to think about it. Please think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Tui. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I add one comment in response?
It's a very,
Sure.
It's a very, very dark kaleidoscope you look through, but thank you.
Well, they're numbers.
I thank you, Mike. Thank you.
They're numbers.
And I think from a community center standpoint, there's no question. And we talked about, I can't remember if we talked about it at the work session, but some of the numbers that I think Ryan presented at the time in September, either at the prelim discussion or at the work session, where when you try to differentiate one generic community from another, one of the most significant differences here is the recreation expense in the community here. No question. And it's, you call it a subsidy, you call it an investment. There's no one advocating to get rid of it. I know you're a regular member. I know a lot of council members are. But the challenge is known, the challenge is real. And I would also say it's, and I think we would agree on this, it's not a new challenge. It's just that we know about it now.
Not new, I would agree. I mean, every year it goes up. But take a look at Lane, Chris.
No, let's not, let's keep moving. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, with that then, the presentation is going to continue, Miller, or are we back at?
No, Mr. Mayor, I would ask if there's no other comments or questions at this
Should I
time.
check the sheet?
I'd like.
There's nobody.
Nobody? Okay.
Okay, we're still going to open up public hearing, even though nobody's.
You can if you want.
Yes.
Okay. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for the council, some council member to open the public hearing.
Second.
On the taxation. So thank you, Councilmember Schluter, seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. And we know that there's nobody signed up to speak regarding this matter. So then at this time, I will entertain a motion to close public hearing.
So, well, second.
I think it's Councilmember Swanberg, Councilmember Tui, thank you. Second by Member Huntington, I believe.
Yep.
All right, any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the consent agenda. Mr. Roby, do you want to go over these with us, please?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 items on tonight's consent agenda. The first is approval of city council minutes from the November 25th, 2024 regular meeting. Second is just approval of disbursements through today. Included in those disbursements are 4 items over $25,000. The first is to MMPA, our purchase power from November 2024, totaling $500,144.64. Second to Bolton & Mank Engineering on the 2025 Street Utility Improvements Project, $55,697. To WW Blacktopping Inc. for the Community Center parking lot, $44,738. And fourth to Galvanizers Inc. Masonry Substation Materials, $44,552.55. And then finally, item C, 1 personnel action, that's the hiring of a full-time police sergeant. We did have one of our police sergeants depart last month, and this is a replacement for that, a backfill for that position.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding tonight's consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So move.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui. Second, Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for?
Nobody signed up.
Nobody signed up for public comment. We'll take that over to the city administrator update, Mr. Roby.
I'm going to try to keep this brief, given we're going through half of the alphabet in that agenda. Thank you to the committee, to all of the businesses, volunteers, and staff members of the city for all of their work putting together Christmas in the Valley last Friday. It was a tremendous event, great turnout, beautiful weather, which we didn't plan, but I'll still express gratitude for it. Thank you to everyone for that. It was a safe, fun event for everyone. Had a great time giving a career presentation to the senior class at LSH last week. I'm not sure what kind of message I imparted upon them, but I hope it was valuable. We'll have a planning commission meeting this Thursday. Also this Thursday, for members of the public, Sueur County is conducting a Vision 2050 kickoff. Vision 2050 is their comprehensive land use project. There is a webinar that's open to the public. You do have to pre-register for it to get the link. It'll be this Thursday at 3 p.m. So I think members of the community who are interested are encouraged to join. The city team will be hosting new council member orientation next Tuesday, the 17th. I want to thank everyone who's already donated to the Lights and Sirens in the Valley campaign that the LSPD and the fire department have jointly put together. This last Saturday, donations can still be dropped off at the Sueur Police Department. City Council's next meeting, and the last one for 2024, will be Monday, December 23rd. We've got a few items slated for that meeting. Airport Access Road Project, the final plans and specs for the SCADA controls project for water and wastewater, and fee schedule ordinance. First reading of that ordinance will be on the December 23rd meeting.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding his update? If not, then I'll take us into tonight's regular agenda, which is starts off in 8A, that'd be R 2024-0598, adoption of the final 2025 general fund budget and property tax levy. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just talked about this. So this is the specific agenda item itself. Process is similar to identical years. Strike that, reverse it. The process is identical to previous years. The resolution in front of City Council here, R 2024-059, would approve the 2025 final general fund budget and the final property tax levy for 2025 with a total levy of $4,002,095. And certainly entertain any additional questions or discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. He just read the motion just moments ago, so if nobody has any questions, I'll accept entertain any motions.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Swanberg. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Mr. Tui, make note, please. Thank you. The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8B, that'd be the adoption of 2025 capital improvement and equipment plans. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we would do each first meeting of December, I'm going to walk through the 2025 capital improvement and capital equipment plans for the general fund and the enterprise funds. We do have city staff here, so if there are specific questions, I may call on you, specifically Mr. Transbert, who joined us tonight to answer some of these questions if they come up. First, to the general fund. This is general fund specific. On the list here are the recommended items to be included on the 2025 general fund capital improvement and capital equipment list. The projects were included in your packet. They're also listed here by department with the stated budget of $752,889. And I can certainly go back to these if you want. I'm just going to continue on. For the enterprise funds, total enterprise fund CIP CEP for 2025 is proposed at $13,133,538. That is broken out here on your screen into two separate boxes, one for cash projects only and one for debt or bonded projects only. As mentioned earlier, you'll note that electric, we have slated to pay cash for all of their capital improvements in 2025. Wastewater slated to borrow for their projects in 2025, and then water and stormwater doing a little of each. Of note, of that $13 million total, the North 4th Street project itself is approximately $7 million. And the SCADA controls project between water and wastewater is an estimated $3 million of that total. Specifically, let's look at electric. Electric's overall CIP for 2025, as recommended, is $3,283,500. Most of that with the North 4th Street electric improvements project, which will be the project that will run, if approved, side by side with the 2025 street and utility project. To the naked eye, they will appear to be one project, but they are two separate projects. We just try to do these projects together when we can because we're going to be breaking into the ground at the same time anyway. There'll be some SCADA system upgrades in electric, some underground improvement projects, and some equipment in our flush study update that are listed for electric in 2025 as well. For wastewater, the bulk of wastewater here is made up of two different things. One is the SCADA controls project, which has been in the works for a couple of years now. And as I referenced earlier, we'll come back on December 23rd for approval of final plans. And then the 2025 street and utility project, or the North 4th Street project. Real quick note on wastewater. We're getting to the point now with wastewater where by the end of 2025, we can start to have a serious discussion of paying cash for projects in wastewater, which is not something that the city's been able to do in wastewater in a long time. And so we're looking forward to that, but from a fund balance position standpoint, are still looking to borrow for all the capital improvements in wastewater in 2025. For the water department, much like wastewater, two of the larger ticket items on here are the SCADA controls project related to the water system, and then the North 4th Street project. Stormwater, we have a number of, this is the one that I'm really excited about all of these things on this list. The North 4th Street project certainly, and part of the reason for establishing the stormwater fund several years ago was that so that we could invest deliberately into the stormwater system and not just rely upon extra money in the general fund or extra money in the water and wastewater department to fund stormwater projects. And so when we look at projects like North 4th Street, there is going to be a major stormwater component of it. As much of North 4th Street does not have any stormwater infrastructure, as Mr. Beanfang has talked to us about several times already. There will be a stormwater component, so stormwater fund will be able to service its own debt going forward. And also Zion Church storm sewer replacement. For those who have driven in the south parking lot at Zion Church anytime in the last 6 months, you'll notice I think there are probably still some cones out there. Foster, is that right? Are there still cones out there?
And
yeah.
the sawhorses.
And, yeah. So there's a pretty significant project that we'll be partnering with the church on, replacing the storm sewer that runs through the property there. And then stormwater management plan and looking at some potential stormwater upgrades in the Cabinet Court neighborhood. You can certainly take any questions. Otherwise,
Anybody have any questions? If not, I will then entertain a motion to approve the 2025 general fund and enterprise funds capital improvement and capital equipment plans as presented by Mr. Roby.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg. I think Councilmember Williams seconded that. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We have one opposed, Mr. Tui. The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8C, the 2024-060 adoption of the 2025 enterprise fund budgets and the 2025 utility rates. Mr. Roby, want to review these for us?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we're looking for in this agenda item is a motion to approve the resolution 060, which would adopt the 2025 water, wastewater, electric, stormwater, and refuse rates, and approve 2025 budgets for all of these enterprise funds. I'm going to walk through each fund individually, and as there are questions, feel free to jump in. Water fund itself, Fund 601. At this time, we have a planned 5% water rate increase in 2025. A positive fund balance projected to end 2024. And with the continued investments in water infrastructure in the future, are a major factor in the 2025 rate plan. Wastewater, right now there's a recommended 5% rate increase for wastewater. This is a little bit earlier than we had expected to go away from the 7.8% wastewater increase that we've seen each of the past number of years. As I mentioned earlier, overall the fund balance position is still negative, but is improving. And 2025 will be budgeted for a surplus for the second year in a row in this fund. In the electric fund, we'll be looking at a the recommendation of a 2% rate increase for 2025. One of the major reasons for the rate increase proposal on electric is, though we have a favorable fund balance position right now, we would like to stay in a position where we can pay cash for some projects. So in order to pay cash for the capital improvements that were approved with the last agenda item, we would be looking to increase rates 2% in 2025. And the stormwater fund, we continue to try to grow this fund balance. As mentioned a few minutes ago, we continue to fund projects that are long overdue, directly related to stormwater. In order to do so, we're going to have to we'll need to be able to service the debt, but also pay cash for projects going forward and fund projects before we bond for them that are specific to stormwater. So it's a recommended 10% rate increase to the stormwater fund, to stormwater rates in 2025. And refuse is of course our garbage and recycling. 2025 will be our final year of a 5-year contract with Waste Management. The contract with Waste Management contemplates a 2.5% increase. And so the rate reflected here also reflects that 2.5% rate increase in 2025. Due to some increased IT costs, we'd be looking to increase the administrative fee 25 cents per month. This is only one sample, but we've used a similar example in previous years. If folks can get a sense for what all of those changes demonstrate on the monthly utility bill. So this is a sample. This is someone who uses 5,000 gallons of water a month. And that's 5,000 gallons on your primary meter, not 5,000 gallons on your irrigation meter. 5,000 gallons on your primary meter, so you can build 5,000 gallons of wastewater as well. The gray-headed column is 2024's bill using 2024 rates. The green-headed bill column is 2025 bill at the 2025 proposed rates. With someone using 5,000 gallons of water a month, 622 kilowatt hours, it's an average residential sized parcel and a 32-gallon refuse container. The overall estimated utility bill would increase $11.90 a month at 4.1%.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions regarding the utilities? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution R 2024-06 adopting the 2025 water, waste, electric, stormwater, refuse, and approving the 2025 budget for all the enterprise funds.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington. Councilmember Tui seconded. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8B, the ordinance 611, second and final reading.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we have some folks from the staff in the audience tonight who, if they choose to share anything with the council, or if there are specific questions council has, I would be more than happy to have Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Sparks come forward and share some wisdom with us. At the November 25th meeting, City Council heard, considered, and waived the first reading of Ordinance 611, which was related to the planned unit development for the Ridge Road housing development, which we have already heard about tonight. I would just remind everyone that this is related to the ordinance itself, which is tied to the planned unit development, is separate from the TIF conversation, which is in a few agenda items later on. The planned unit development itself and preliminary plat, which we'll talk about again in a couple of agenda items, is to develop approximately 11 acres adjacent to distal subdivision and distal second subdivision. with construction of 35 single-family homes over 3 years with a mix of different housing types. And cannot stress enough the importance of this development being directly tied to the EDA's 2023 housing study, which directed the city, strongly recommended that the city plat single-family lots immediately. As I mentioned, City Council waived the first reading of the PUD ordinance at its November 25th meeting. Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing at their meeting on November 14th. The commission recommended approval of the PUD, hence the appearance of this ordinance back on November 25th in front of the City Council. Should City Council pass this second reading, we will look to the next agenda item, which will involve a summary publication of the ordinance. At this time, if there are any questions, we can certainly happy to take them.
Anybody have any questions? If not, I'll look for a volunteer to read the entire second reading and final reading of ordinance 611.
No, I'll make a motion to waive the second and final reading of ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Sanger. Seconded by Councilmember Tui. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8A, resolution R 2024-57, ordinance 611, summary publication. Mr. Wilkie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I teased a moment ago, now that the City Council has waived the second and final reading, the next step is publication in the official newspaper. We are obliged to publish the entirety of the ordinance. However, if the City Council passes a resolution such as the one presented to City Council tonight that allows for a summary publication that reasonably reflects the intent and purpose of the ordinance, then the city may publish that summary instead of the entire language. So the resolution in front of the council tonight, R 2024-057, would do just that and approve a summary publication of ordinance 611. The summary is included in the packet, and I trust everyone had an opportunity to review it and find that it meets the spirit of the full ordinance.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, Mr. Roby just read the resolution ahead of you. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui.
Second.
Councilmember Swanberg. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8F, resolution R 2024-056, Ridge Road preliminary plot approval. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item regarding the Ridge Road housing development is the preliminary plat approval. Workhorse Land Development has submitted an application for preliminary plat of this property. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the preliminary plat along with the PUD, which came in the form of ordinance 611. The criteria for denying the preliminary plat in this case are, in the eyes of city staff, not met. City code has some fairly specific criteria under which the City Council or Planning Commission City Council may deny, or Planning Commission may recommend denial of a preliminary plat. The resolution itself, 056, that addresses approval of the preliminary plat, does have 5 conditions. One, that the development ultimately generally adhere to the plans as presented. Number 2, city engineer requirements shall be met. Number 3, that the city and developer shall enter into a development agreement separate from the TIF agreement that Mr. Sweeney mentioned earlier, just to be clear. 4th, that the developer's park dedication shall come in the form of a trail extension on the city property immediately to the south of the developed property. And finally, that the final plat application shall be made within 1 year of the approval of the preliminary plat. And it's worth noting that should City Council approve the preliminary plat, that as long as the final plat generally meets with the guidance of the preliminary plat itself, the City Council will be compelled to accept and approve the final plat.
Steve, go ahead.
How is the county involved in this, or are they?
So the county's been involved in a couple of ways. Less from a land use standpoint and more from their direct interest in the adjacent properties. So directly to the west of this development, there is a portion of the western edge of this property that abuts the county, or a county, an Ottawa Township property. So the county has an interest in that. The county also has interest in the fallout of stormwater to the ravine to the south, which is in the county.
But they don't have anything to do with the plating. They have to accept what we give them.
Ultimately, yes, when it's recorded, correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution R 2024-056, approving the preliminary plat to allow the subdivision of the subject property.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schleter. Councilmember Williams seconded. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8G, resolution R 2024-062, establishment of TIF District 1 through 22 related to Bridge Road development. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This agenda item is directly related to the public hearing that we had earlier tonight regarding the establishment of TIF District 22 within the city of Sueur related to the Ridge Road housing development. Where, of course, land development has requested and applied for tax increment financing to assist with the project and the public improvements that we made as part of this development. The EDA reviewed the draft TIF financing plan, found that the terms were satisfactory, and recommended the public hearing to City Council. That public hearing was conducted earlier this evening, and I don't know that we need an overview again, but again, it's a 26-year TIF as proposed, 95% pay as you go. Developer finances the upfront investment, and then city reimburses over time with the tax increments. I apologize, I thought there was another slide. But there isn't anything more to note on that, but I can certainly take additional questions.
Anybody? If not, the motion I have this is, thank you, to adopt resolution R 2024-062 as presented. You have something else?
I was just going to say, I remembered what it was. It wasn't an initial slide, it was a comment on what Mr. Sweeney said earlier, which was this resolution specifically just to dispel any confusion would authorize the city to execute the TIF agreement with the developer. We'll also send the agreement to the EDA for consideration of approval. We'll also approve the TIF financing plan as presented.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for the resolution above. So moved. Thank you, Councilmember Huntington. Councilmember Schleter seconded. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8H, resolution R 2024-061, sale of 2024 A electric utility revenue bonds. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to give a quick summary here, and then I'm going to invite Mr. Sweeney back up, if that's all right with you, to give some additional details as he's been managing this process. I'm sorry.
Is he still here, Mr. Sweeney?
He certainly is.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
In the 2024 electric utility CIP, there was a project involving the rehabilitation of the Main Street substation. That project is underway right now, and if you've driven down North Main Street or tried to go down the alley near Oak Street today, you've discovered this project is happening. When City Council approved that project as part of the CIP, it was planned to be a project that would be funded through bond proceeds. And we've been working with Mr. Sweeney, and by we mean Mr. Transberg, Mr. Graff, primarily working with Shannon on the timing, on the size, and the type of issuance that would be appropriate to fund the project. With that, Mr. Sweeney, if you could please come forward and share some details about this specific issuance. The council will recognize that this is a bank placement type issuance. The council is not unaware of such placements. We've done one as recently as 2023 for an equipment certificate.
Thank you. For members of the council, ultimately, we evaluated a couple of methods for selling bonds, including a public sale, a competitive public sale versus just a negotiated public sale and a bank placement. And ultimately, the bank placement offers the most efficient issuance costs. While our utility can likely be rated, it isn't a general obligation pledge that we make for the repayment of this bond issue. It's simply a pledge of electric utility revenues. And with that, there's a fair amount of disclosure that's required. And if we purchase a credit rating, there's an ongoing maintenance fee that would ultimately be tens of thousands of dollars to be continuously monitored through the life of the debt. And we pay significant fees associated with doing that. If we were a frequent issuer, we'd maybe consider it, but we're not intending to be a frequent issuer. Our electric utility is in good shape. We're intending to pay cash for the next project of a similar size in 2025. This was just presented in the budget. But as part of our CIP capital improvement plan, ultimately, we had indicated that we intended to finance this project. Ultimately, we employed a placement agent that is able to introduce the city to multiple lending institutions for the purpose of selling bonds. It's not something that a municipal advisor can do on their own by federal regulation. And so information pertaining to the issue was sent to 11 different banks, several of which have expressed interest in purchasing City of Sueur bonds in the past. And ultimately, the lowest proposal, and I would mention all of the local banks received the information, were invited to participate or purchase a portion of the bond issue. But at the end of the day, Security Bank and Trust of Glencoe, Minnesota offered the lowest overall cost of borrowing at 4.55% interest rate on the 15-year term. We have good debt coverage on this issue, meaning our ability to repay it. We're strong and we're healthy in our electric utility, and we're able to pay this off and demonstrate our ability to do so, which attracted this bid, essentially. Debt coverage is something that's monitored on a transaction like this, and it was probably the most important characteristic that was evaluated, and we have strong debt coverage. And so ultimately, we did receive a good bid. It was slightly below what we had previously anticipated receiving by 0.05%. And so it was relatively close to what we expected to happen. And so at the end of the day, we're recommending the award of sale of this bond issue to Security Bank and Trust. Happy to answer questions from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
How close were the competitors' rates?
Not close. More than 0.5% above was the next cover bid.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, we appreciate that.
Thanks.
With that, I will entertain any motions to adopt resolution R 2024-061.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui.
Second.
Councilmember Williams, second. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8I, that'd be resolution R 2024-063. Plans and specifications of the 2025 street utility improvements project. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, Mr. Bean has anticipated my request for him to approach the bench. And he's here with us tonight to talk about something that the City Council has discussed numerous times in the last 6 months, which is our 2025 street utility project, colloquially known as the North 4th Street and Cathcart Street project. And we're at the point in the timeline tonight when it would be appropriate for City Council to consider acceptance of final plans and specs for the project, and also order bidding for the project. I think with that, Corey, I'll let you take it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roby. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. So tonight we're kind of coming to the completion of a over year-long process here relating to that 2025 street utility project. a summary of timeline that should all be very familiar with council here at this point. The most notable update here of recent was our open house. We held that before Thanksgiving. That was our open house number 2 to stay consistent. We called that our final design open house. We had a lower attendance than the first one. About a dozen people, if I'm rounding up, attended that open house. The project has been consistent here all along as what we're defining our 2025 project, focusing on North 4th Street and then Cathcart Street. And the final plan that has been prepared addresses those project needs that we've been talking about regarding roadway condition, utilities, improvement of drainage, and then the ADA improvements with the continuous pedestrian facilities on both sides. So here's just a clipping of the title sheet that incorporates that final plan. It is a final plan signed by me as engineer of record, and then I'll talk here in the next slide about those additional review and approvals that need to be granted yet. Within that plan, and at the open house too, we were able to share and give some additional insight into some of the phasing or staging of the project that we're proposing. Kind of consistent to our last several projects, there are going to be multiple phases to try to manage balancing that work for efficiency and scheduling of the contractor, but also mindfulness for access and ability to conduct business and residential needs. So we'll have 5 stages with this project. 5 is pretty minor there, but really 4 main roadway stages. And it is anticipated that a couple stages will be under construction at any one time, but really focusing on that St. Anne's and bus garage connection there initially to get through the school year, and then mindfulness of trying to get that work completed. Stage 2 and 3B primarily before the resumption of school then in the fall of 25. So I think with this schedule, we feel confident we can accomplish some of those milestones. It is noted though that this will be the entirety of the construction season of 25, hopefully, and that's kind of what reinforces some of these decisions now so that we can be in best position to capitalize on Mother Nature come spring. So then next steps here notable there tonight is the meeting to approve final plans and authorize that advertisement for bids. You can kind of see here a long list of additional steps yet. Tonight's approval felt warranted in the sense that we're the road authority here for North 4th Street, kind of that first approval to recognize our acceptance of the design. That'll go to Sueur County then. They are a partner here because of the LRP funds, and then ultimately go to District State Aid Engineer as well related to the LRP funds. And then we have the PFA, that Public Facilities Authority, relating to the clean water and drinking water. So some milestones yet to come. That puts us in position to advertise for bids at early February for an anticipated bid opening early March. And that's been consistent for our target there to capitalize hopefully on good markets. And then bringing those bids back to council in March for consideration of board. And then we enter our kind of construction phase of the project, an open house before construction in April, and then hopefully good weather in May. That completion substantially then, end of 25, they're noted there, October 31st. Our fall assessment process, that's at chapter 429, our second required hearing there in September. And then ultimately targeting a construction final completion in summer of 26. That date might shift a little bit, but notably we would be final complete then, summer of 2026. So summary here tonight, following our special assessment process, chapter 429, this is a necessary step. That approval is to be granted by a resolution that will be presented here and is in the packet. Our final projected cost is consistent with our preliminary estimate. So we have a project cost of just slightly over 8.5 million. At our final plan time, we started running with a little contingency, a 5% contingency. So hopeful as we get to the final phase here and we receive those bids, we'll be able to ideally reduce that contingency. And we'll find that out formally when we do open those bids, and then those bids are brought back for council for review and consideration. That second meeting in March right now is our target for that. So happy to address any questions or additional discussion here with council, but the action that's requested for consideration is that resolution R 2024-063, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids for the 2025 street utility project.
Thank you. Appreciate your guidance there, Mr. Bean Fang. Looking forward to working with you on this project.
You as well.
With that, does anybody have any questions for our engineer? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve R 2024-063.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schleter. Second, Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Takes on to agenda item 8J, which is resolution R 2024-058, state aid rules design deviation request. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very brief introduction here. So there's a nuance to the 2025 street utility project plans that were just approved by City Council, and Mr. Bean is going to explain it to us here. No more introduction. I think Council can take it.
Thank you, Mr. Robbie. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council again. The nuance that Mr. Roby alluded to is this project was a successful recipient of an LRFP, local road improvement grant, for the value of 1.5 million. We found out about that award in April of 2024. Understanding as part of that application, there was going to be some requirements that were going to be required to be adhered to for the design of this project. So any use of state funds, in this case, it allowed or required the utilization of a state aid operations minimum design standards. This is a standard that's familiar to us. Our previous two projects, the CASA 22 Trunk Highway 112 turnback, as well as South Main Street CASA 36, required adherence to those state aid rules. So something not unfamiliar to us, and we're anticipated in this case. If you don't mind. So we're going to talk about the design rules that are of, I guess, greatest concern here is relating to the S curve, the horizontal curve located at Cathcart. So we're going to explain the challenge related to the application of standard there. So state aid rule, there's a whole slew of rules that are governed by state statute 8820. Not to get into too much detail here, but there is a standard that applies to urban newer reconstruction roadways, which we are fully adhering to. And it's a standard that requires for roadways that are in this new urban newer reconstruction to adhere to a 30-mile-an-hour design speed. In the case of the S curves that are located currently on this corridor, they meet a 25-mile-an-hour design speed. So there is a request or through the state rule a requirement to meet the 30-mile-an-hour, but we have identified some challenges, and mainly a right-of-way, a developed condition challenge that doesn't allow for us, or we're requesting deviation to avoid a 30-mile-an-hour design, maintain a 25-mile-an-hour design, which matches the current condition, if you don't mind, Joe. So as we consider these things, it's a curve radius, so it's a length of curve. There's a number of things to consider, and to kind of compound on the challenge of this is the corridor of North 4th Street, north of Cathcart, was discovered to be not centered within the right-of-way. It's shifted to the east, so it's disproportioned in its location to the east in lieu of to the west. And so as part of a reconstruction project like this, we try to be really mindful and make corrections so that a roadway is centered within the right of way and there's equal space granted on both sides. What this is doing is it's forcing 4th Street in its proposed alignment to be further west, so taking property away from the west. This is significant because in order to achieve a 30-mile-an-hour design standard, it would further impact the properties on the west. So we're trying to be mindful about what standard, kind of what priority we apply in the design. Additionally, we're all aware that the 4th Street corridor is widening in footprint due to the value and the recommended improvements of pedestrian facilities. So any shift of alignment for just the road, plus the addition of pedestrian facilities, which are non-existent today, would further impact that west side. We've got the intersection of Cathcart to consider. And then this is all kind of boiling down in the sense that this is still a local roadway. This is a roadway that isn't a part of the state aid system. It's managed by the local city road authority. And so I think there's mindfulness of what this roadway is intended to accomplish too, from a design speed and a function and operation. And some of the points that I've made on other projects, mindfulness of lane widths, 11 feet versus 12, widths of roadway curve radiuses. These are all things that can be implemented as effective strategies to manage travel speed as well, which I think is something that we're always being attentive to. What's the actual travel speed on the corridor, if you don't mind, Joe. So a lot of words here, but ultimately what we've identified in this is that the existing alignment that is there today is what we're proposing to put back, with the one exception is that we're straightening the alignment north of Cathcart. We're shifting that road to be centered. And so ultimately you see here in this graphic real quickly is the black is the existing condition. It matches really closely with the aerial. You'll see the center line, bold line, the dashed lines on the outside. The red is the proposed design. So very mimicking of the existing with the exception of that alignment to the north, north of Cathcart, they're heading towards Market. And then you see the proposed design standard in blue, a pretty noticeable change in footprint, location, and length there to meet the proposed design standard. Additional considerations are 2019 statute allowed for cities to evaluate the statutory speed limit within city limits for local roadways. Statutory speed limit's 30. Cities can enact a speed limit that's less than that. So we feel like a 25-mile sign is reasonable here and defendable. And then there's things we can do to help mitigate and convey this advisory speed to the public. There is a reverse curve sign there today. There is no speed advisory limit sign. That 25-mile is something we would propose to enact in this case. Don't mind, Joe. So in summary, we're here and I'm presenting this because of the receipt of LRP funds, which we, obviously very much valued for this project, helped us accomplish the full footprint. We're aware of the state aid rule for a 30-mile-an-hour design, but we are requesting a design deviation for a 25-mile design. Proposed curve is equal to the current condition. We pulled accident data, evaluation with staff is operational. You don't have concerns with replacing that existing curve with what's there today. And we have had to collaborate with Sueur County because they are our sponsor for those receipt of LRP funds. They as well have to pass a resolution to consider this design deviation, and we are in full agreement that our request is appropriate, and they are supporting us in that request. So happy to entertain any discussion that the council may have. But before you tonight is a resolution to formally request a design standard deviation that would then be reviewed by a committee of 3 individuals at the Minnesota DOT for acceptance of our deviation. And to give council a little bit of context, there's a very formal design variance process. It's the title of the variance process, 2 state aid rules, and I have some experience in that. The reason we're not a variance is because we're not a state aid corridor. We're not on the state aid system. So we classify this design deviation. According to MnDOT, this is the first ever request for a design deviation, so a little unique. The variance is not. Now I have experience applying for a variance in a horizontal curve situation in another community exactly like this, where a developed condition limited the roadway footprint. The change of the roadway footprint, maybe more clearly. So I feel confident in design deviation. The timing is such that we've vetted this fully, and we are requesting strong consideration for this. So hopefully a little more context to kind of defend the timing, but there is a resolution before council tonight, and happy to answer any questions or get into greater detail as desired.
Thank you, Mr. Beanfang. You're pretty clear with all that. So
Just curious, how long do you expect to get an answer?
Well, we expect an answer in 2 weeks. We have a deviation meeting with MnDOT, that committee, on December 19th.
If you were a gambling man?
I say we have a really strong chance.
Thank you.
any other questions, Mr. Rubin?
And if they deny it, what happens then?
We'll have to reconsider. So I think a denial, we'll have to come with some direction from that committee as far as what they look to see. And I think our case and our defense for it is very sound. It's looking at the complete roadway design and not just emphasis on the horizontal curve. So obviously I can't predict the future, Councilmember Schrader, but I feel very confident, and certainly intent wasn't to misguide the city or this process. So I do feel real confident in it. I think we've been mindful and sound in our judgment and our defense for it. And so, obviously a little risk, but I feel really strongly with it.
And you'll be precedent setting based on the only thing.
Well, the design deviation will be precedent setting. The request for and the defense of the design, not so, but the deviation process certainly.
Thank you. Anybody else?
One thing I'd like to add quickly is Corey mentioned in the last agenda item, some of the conversations we've had with St. Anne's, just as a major property along this corridor, recognizing that one of the key property owners at this corridor is the school district and the operation of the bus garage, which uses that intersection as its primary ingress egress. We did have a preliminary meeting with the school district just to have a conversation. Just in full disclosure, this is what the driveway might look like. This is what the curb might look like. This is the process we're following. So, I mean, I can't say that we got a formal blessing or a rejection from them, but certainly engaged with the district in the conversation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution R 2024-058. I'm not going to read the whole one again. You can all look up there.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington, second Councilmember Tui. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Beanfang. Moving on to item 8K. That'd be city 2025 pay plan updates. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last two agenda items on tonight's agenda, we also requested City Council evaluate every year two things. One is the city pay plan, which directly looks at the point scoring evaluation of each job title within the city, the grade in which that position falls, and the minimum and maximum wage for that position. In the pay plan itself, which was established in 2019 following a full compensation classification study. Essentially, the pay plan establishes a minimum and maximum guardrail by which the city should operate for all positions. And this is less so a budgetary impact directly as it is looking into anytime we post a job. When we post that job is based upon a specific job description. That job description has been independently scored to determine how many points it is assigned and therefore what grade it falls into. And City Council in 2019 started establishing a minimum and maximum for each of those grades. So when we post a position, we post a minimum and maximum. The City of Sueur pay plan is where we derive those minimums and maximums. Each year we look at those when we look at when we look to the future of recruitment and retention, where does the City of Sueur need to be to ensure that we're staying within market conditions? And there's less of a direct budgetary impact with these numbers and more of a, if you look to 9 months from now and we posted a grade 7 position, the recommendation would be in front of you for the minimum and maximum annual wage for that position. No other proposed changes have been made for the pay plan other than a general 5% increase to the minimum and maximum for these pay grades for 2025.
What was last year? Do you remember?
5% last year.
So 5, 5, 5. Okay.
Anybody else? Council members, I think this graph, this scale is kind of familiar to all of you. You've seen it in the past. Of course, it's changed a little over the years. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby? If not, I'll entertain a motion approving the update of the 2025 City of Sueur pay plan as presented. Thank you, Council Member Williams. So moved, Council Member Kirby. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
We have 3 opposed, 3 ayes.
5%'s too rich. Nobody around here gets 5%.
Is this something we can bring back to the council, Mr. Roby, before the end of the year? Or do we vote again tonight? How do you want to handle this? We are short 1 council member.
is certainly something we could bring back to the council at a future meeting.
I think it'd be much simpler if we had a seventh council member.
Well, or if there was
Another motion.
another motion presented, and some discussion that might guide what the number should be. And if not, then if the motion doesn't pass, it will just stay at 2024 levels for 2025.
I'd rather see us bring this back to the next meeting at the end of December so we can include these last two council members before they leave and also include Mr. Sullivan. That is my
I
motion.
mean, just for, why did I vote 10% in 2 years to me seems rich. I'm sorry, but it does. I know when I was working, 3, 4. Anybody else?
I agree with Mike.
Sam.
My motion, thank you for the discussion. Yep, that's fine. My motion is I would like to bring this back to the council at the end of the,
I don't think you
At the end of
need
the
to
year.
make that motion. It will come back. It'll be on the next agenda. This motion failed. Nothing else on the agenda regarding this.
so if it comes back, I'd like to make a motion that we make an adjustment here of 3.5%.
I could move.
Yeah, that's my motion. Second,
Second.
3.5%. We'll change this chart. And then we'll move ahead from there. Any other discussion, comments, concerns?
Yeah, is this something that we can do?
We're doing it now.
Well, it wasn't, the agenda item was, the motion failed. We've passed our agenda.
Yeah, the recommendation was just approving the table as presented.
Okay.
And since that
Fails.
didn't immediately pass, then
And I made it simple.
another motion can be made.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was something we could do.
3.5% increase. So it was seconded. We asked for any other discussion, comments, concerns. All those in favor?
Can I,
Please.
one point of clarification, because it will have an impact on the next agenda item that's discussed, which is performance pay. So in theory, if you have an individual who's near the maximum of their scale right now, and the next proposal on item 8L were to pass as recommended, there could be some individuals who are qualified for a performance pay increase who cannot get it because the maximum in their pay grade has not increased. I'm just,
Repeat that again.
so if you have someone who is at the top of their scale right now, and they're eligible for a 5% performance pay increase, table increase is 3.5%. They would get 3.5%, not get 5%.
Right. That's the. Yeah, okay.
That's where we're at.
So we don't have any background on what's out there market wise.
We have some, yeah,
Okay, but we don't have it now.
no.
And I understand what you're saying, but if you read some of the papers and some of those increases out there are quite a bit in order to stay competitive within the market.
I think it depends upon what profession you're talking about.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly.
So we had a motion by myself, and it was seconded by, I believe, Mr. Dewey.
Yeah.
That we've changed this chart to a 3.5, reflect a 3.5% increase. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8L, the 2025 performance pay policy updates. Mr. Roby, hope we haven't complicated things for you.
I'll just explain what the proposal is here and allow council to discuss. Along with the comprehensive comp and class study that was done in 2019 that established pay ranges for each of the grades for each position, City Council adopted a performance pay policy, which would set a scoring classification for annual performance reviews, and then any and all increases for non-union members would come out of performance reviews. So there is no base cost of living that any employee is eligible for. The only increases year to year that an employee is eligible for come via the performance pay policy. Annually, the city considers updates to this policy based upon market conditions and staff and budget. And the 2025 performance pay table in front of council tonight is what has been proposed for 2025, which is scores between a 3 and 5 would 3 and 5 out of 5 would receive a minimum of 3.25%, and up dependent upon the department's budget.
Do you have an average? I mean, you've been collecting this data for years. What is the average? Because I know when I used to do these things, it was somewhere between a 4 and a 5.
In terms of scores?
Yeah.
The score, last year's average score was a 4.1.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So technically they could get up to a 7.25. And
if their budget allows it, yes. The budget per department.
who makes that decision?
Council, or who makes which decision?
Whether it's 3.25 or 7.25.
The supervisor.
The manager does,
Okay.
but it's set based upon the budget.
And the manager is responsible for the budget.
The manager is responsible for keeping their budget, but the city council is responsible for setting that budget. So what was adopted in the budget earlier today was an average increase of 5.25% for all union personnel, not all non-union. So if you have one employee and they get any score above a 3, budgetarily the most you can give them is 5.25. If you have 2 employees, one who gets a 3 and one who gets nearly a 5, you can differentiate. Yes, correct. But the budget that was adopted tonight allows for a 5.25% increase across the board.
They always come in between 4 and 4, unless you was really, then the person would be gone before you get down into the trees of that. My experience.
So this is where the 5.25%, which is approved in the budget, may not all employees may be eligible for that. If they're near the top of their scale.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Otherwise, we'll look at the action ahead of us. And this would be a recommendation, if I could, or have a motion approving the amended performance pay policy as presented.
So moved.
Councilmember Schläger. Anybody else? I'll second it. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. Councilmember Swanberg. The ayes have it. Moving on to reports of appreciation. Council members, is your opportunity to show what's going on with your committees, your commissions, and with the community. And as always, we'll start with Councilmember Huntington.
I've got nothing.
Thank you. Councilmember Schläger.
November 26th, Administrator Roby and I sat down with Region 9 staff for a discussion on priorities. December 4th, I had a Highway 169 meeting, and as Administrator Roby mentioned before, Planning Commission meeting this Thursday.
Thank you, Councilmember Schläger. Councilmember Sullivan is absent tonight. Councilmember Swanberg.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned once already, but thank you to everyone who was involved with Christmas in the Valley. It was a huge success. Also, thanks to city staff and the fire department for restoring the power rather quickly on Saturday. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, Dave, you stole my thunder. I thought that the city did an exemplary job. I don't know what happened, but I know that if it was out that long, it was serious, and they did a damn fine job getting back online. And everybody's right about that Christmas festival. It was a gas.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Just, to what everybody else had said.
Thank you. Yeah, I also had a good time with the Christmas in the Valley. We had outstanding participation down there. I want to thank everybody who was involved with making that happen. And the weather was beautiful. And I'm looking forward to next year's already. So with that, I will entertain a motion to discuss this meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.